It's hard to describe, but like that first hill on a roller coaster, only you don't get that weird tummy feeling. It's just all of a sudden the bottom drops out.
It's an incredibly visual sport, and you get visual cues not just from what's in front of you, but from your peripheral vision, what's around you. Seeing the wind, seeing the direction you're moving, all these little things.
What you doing, Ma?
Trying to talk BJ down.
Who's that?
Right up there. Give me a 90 right, BJ. 360 all the way around, BJ.
All the way around.
Let it fly. Little left. Where? All right!
Thanks, bro. All right. Use a radio and a ground radio operator.
Good. Trusting, huh?
I was playing in a rock band in a garage. We were called the Years of Yearning. Matt was one of my fans, and we were practicing in the garage when he brought his brother over from that just had gotten out of the Air Force. We hit it off, and we smoked a doobie together and formed a lifelong friendship. And I was 16 at the time, I believe.
Blind John brought Grog out to skydive. So I taught Grog how to skydive. Now, we all three became real good friends from that time on.
He's been an inspiration in my life.
He was just one of the guys in the drop zone when I came out here.
First time I remember really seeing him, I even tripped over his dog.
He was one of the most loving, good sports, generous, fun to be around people that you could ever want to meet.
I got to know John Fleming back in 1990. I went out to make a skydive. From the very start, he was just one of those guys that you are gravitated towards. You know, he just brought you into his world.
John always had that infectious smile and was always a happy-go-lucky guy.
I made my first jump in 1978. And BJ and Grog, they were already jumpers. So when I made my first jump, those guys, they were already above me.
I met John in the second grade in Colton, California.
Colton is a railroad city. Be it right or wrong, we used to play around on the tracks and to go to the movies. To come home, we'd go back and go down to the tracks, and usually we'd just ask a train worker or something, hey, is this train going to Colton?
Great idea, right? No. That thing started rolling 50, 60 miles an hour. And it was bouncing up and down. We were just hanging on the outside. Terrible trip.
By the time it finally slowed down,
we got off the train and we didn't know where we were. And there were cop cars coming by.
Turns out he was an off-duty police officer.
And he said something to the effect that we were at Fullerton, California, never heard of it. He informed us that we had been trespassing on the railroad, so he took us to the jailhouse. That was the last time I ever jumped a freight train.
When was the last time we got caught? Graduated in June of 1961. And in August 1961, I went in the Air Force. They had you hold a little paddle up to your eye, then read the chart down into the hallway. Well, I kind of tipped the paddle a little bit so that I was able to see with both eyes. I spent 4 years in the Air Force. I tried to re-enlist, but my eyesight had gotten to the point that I couldn't even fake it. They were flabbergasted that I had gotten in the Air Force. I had a private pilot's license.
In 1969, I was in an airplane by myself, up flying just for fun, and I came within about 40, maybe 50 feet of having a mid-air collision with an airplane that I just plain didn't see. When I realized what had happened, I landed the airplane, I took the keys into the airport office, handed them the keys, said it's been fun, and I never flew an airplane again by myself.
After about a year of struggling and finally losing my private pilot's license, I realized I wasn't going to go into flying as a career and kind of dropped out of college and ended up going into ceramic tile.
John was a tile setter. John's father was a tile setter. John's father was a master tile setter. I was building a custom house, and I had to have John and his brother Matt. You know, nobody else would set the tile in my house. John was losing his sight. I found the brightest light bulb I could find and put it on a table lamp and without a shade, and he was setting a backsplash. And John would have to take the tape measure and go up like this and measure, and then get down on his cutting board like this, and then make the cut, and then go back up against where the thin set was to set the tile.
I was working for my dad, and he had sent me out on a remodel job. And I got lost, and at that time, I had to get 2 feet from whatever it was to see it clearly. I had shimmied up a street sign, and lo and behold, my dad happened to come around the corner right about that time and caught me. That's when I stopped driving my dad's trucks. I was in Southern Oregon on my way home, and I stopped to pick up what I thought was a hitchhiker. And the person didn't respond and didn't come up, so I backed my truck up to say, "Do you want a ride or what?" And it turns out it was a mailbox. That was pretty much the last time I drove my truck.
There were some really rough times. He was low. He had to give up driving. He couldn't re-enlist in the Air Force. He had to give up flying.
In our society anymore, if you can't drive, you're pretty stuck. I started wearing glasses when I was in the 4th grade. A teacher finally recognized that I wasn't seeing the board. At that time, all the way up through high school, we just thought we had bad eyes, my brother and I especially. So one evening I was having dinner with my, at that time, girlfriend, and the phone rang. I answered. It's my brother Eugene in Harvard. "Hey John, how you doing, bro? Guess what? We're gonna go blind." It was like a shocker.
Flare, dude, flare!
I started skydiving on a dare. The Golden Knights, the world's best skydivers, the Army parachute team, was on the Wide World of Sports, and we were watching it, and I had made the statement, "Oh, I'd always wanted to do that." And Pat says, "Well, I'll do it if you'll do it." When I jumped out of the airplane the first time, my feet weren't back on the ground before I knew I'm going to do that again. And I did. I did it 1,938 times.
You can't see your hand in front of your face, right?
You can't see my hand in front of my face.
Can you imagine jumping out of an airplane when you could not see the ground and trusting someone to talk you down? I can't. I wouldn't even consider it.
To be blind in skydiving, because it's a challenging sport if you're sighted, right? So we all thought, hey, I know, let's all try putting blindfolds on. So exiting the aircraft, no problem. Free fall, no problem. After we'd open our parachute, no problem. But then as we were starting to get instructions from somebody on the ground on the radio, there was not a single guy in this whole group on this load that kept his blindfold on.
What was his vision like at that point?
He was still denying that he couldn't see. You know, he would say, "Oh, I could see that good."
Retinitis pigmentosa takes your peripheral vision first, typically starts with poor vision at night, and then during the daytime your peripheral vision will concentrically constrict over many years to just a small point of vision in the center.
He could say, I still see the ground, or I can see the bridge. And when we were jumping into the boat neck, we were landing in the inner tube. We were trying to hit an inner tube in the middle of the river, John and all of us. And I always spotted for him, and then I went out last. And we swung around, and the pilot said, I'm only gonna let John go if he can see the bridge. And so John climbed out, and the pilot hit me and says, can you see it? And I said, John, you see it? And he looked down and he looked back up and smiled and said, sure. And left. And I knew damn well he couldn't see it. He just planned on seeing it when he got closer to it.
My skydiving friends started telling me, maybe you've had enough. You've made over 800 jumps. Maybe it's time for you to quit. Well, after they talked to me for a few minutes, they realized that quitting wasn't an option. I was going to continue to skydive one way or another.
One day we're not going to get away with this, and you're going to be dead, and I'm going to have to live with it. He got really upset with me, and he goes, Zimmo, you got to do it. He goes, if you don't do it, I can't skydive anymore. I'm done. I said, okay, John, I'm going to do it. There's one rule, one stipulation. If you get killed, it's not my fault. He goes, done.
He pounded in a lot. In other words, he landed hard a lot of times, and we just thought, wow, what must that be like?
And yesterday you had a malfunction, huh?
Yesterday I had a cutaway.
Yeah?
Number 15.
No shit, there I was, thought I was gonna die. John and Beetle, on opening, wrapped their parachutes together, and John had to cut away.
I was fairly close by under canopy, and I'm going, BJ, get your hand out. His hands were stuck in the lines.
Attack, Beetle!
He goes, it's fucking caught!
Get away! Get away!
I was bawling my eyes out.
I never had John land in a tree. I saw someone else land John in a tree. I won't mention the name.
I actually put him into a tree about 30 feet up. I'll take the blame for the first one, but the second one's on you, Beach.
John ended up landing about 100 foot off the ground, hanging in a pine tree.
For whatever reason, Mark was not available on that load, so I talked him in. Hadn't done it for a few months. And as we were talking him in, I don't remember exactly how it happened.
It took us hours to get him out of there.
A gust of wind came along, inflated his parachute behind him, and started to drag him off the tree. And he grabbed onto a large branch, he's holding onto it, and now he's hanging there and he's getting this drag. His parachute's trying to pull him off of there.
If I remember right, we used a combination of a ladder and heavy equipment to get him down.
I climbed the tree as fast as I could, and I got up to him, and he's hanging on this branch, and he says, Mike, he goes, I can't hold on any longer. And I said, John, I said, there's nothing below you for 30 feet but sharp, pointy rocks. And he says, I think I can hold on a bit longer.
If you have a passion for something and because of your eyesight you think you can't do it, well, what you got to do is just get together with other people that do it, do some brainstorming, figure out some ways to adapt. And there's just about nothing that, as people who are visually impaired and blind, that we can't do.
And then there was the time Zimmo made Blind John drive from Grants Pass to Roseburg.
I told Blind John, I had a VW Bug, I said, why don't you drive, I said, I'll just tell you where to go.
And I was riding shotgun, and the guy driving, just all of a sudden says, here, John, grab the wheel.
And Zimmo would just turn around and talk to us in the back seat.
So we're doing 65 miles an hour, and we're all talking and stuff. We might have even had a beer open or something. I don't know.
We had open containers in the car.
And my friends in the back are telling me, left, left, right, left.
If he kept that center line right there, he could do it. But every time that line would break, he would go off to the right or left.
But all of a sudden, we took this off-ramp at 65 miles an hour because the white line follows the off-ramp.
He just would take every road that veered to the right.
At one point, I could just barely see the white line. And so I was looking at that and trying to drive to stay right on that line. Well, we came to an off-ramp.
And it's a short off-ramp, and I was turning around talking, and somebody started screaming in the back seat, "We just took an off-ramp, we just took an off-ramp." And I turned around, I looked, and here comes a stop sign. And John's going, "What do I do, what do I do?" And I said, "Just hold it straight, John, hold it straight." We went through the stop sign at 65 miles an hour, and on the other side was the on-ramp.
And I just went right off and right back on again. It was not smart, but we did it.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
After the first time out, I knew it was something I wanted to do.
He went home and practiced in a chair with a broom.
I like being a part of a team because it makes me work harder.
Oh, he was a great team member. He was always for the team. If we were sounding off in time to keep us paddling in time, ladies and gentlemen, you could always hear John's voice.
Who are we?
Blind Ambition!
Woohoo!
The first time I remember really seeing him, he was sitting in the Oregon delegation in his first guide dog, Kiowa. It was all sprawled out in the middle of the aisle. I even tripped over his dog. I thought he was kind of a doofus. He came back from that convention, was elected in October to be the state president of the American Council of the Blind of Oregon. And I volunteered to edit the state newsletter. So it turned out that we had to work a lot together. He began calling me just to talk to me, but I didn't know that. John took my son and I to dinner. After dinner, we went back to his room to play with his guide dog. Tim said, "He's a really nice man, Mom." We were trying to watch a movie with audio description. We got stuck in this musical loop and we could not watch the movie. So we started hugging and kissing again. And he said, "Oh, Darian, I think I'm falling in love with you." And I said, "Oh no." We were actually just platonic friends for like 7 years. And so when he said he was falling in love with me, I tried to talk him out of it. Because I had been in relationships and I had been in an abusive marriage. And I had been rejected so many times that by the time John and I were friends for 7 years, I didn't know if I wanted to jeopardize that. And so I started trying to tell him all the reasons why he shouldn't. One of them was, "Well, I have fat rolls all over me." He said, "Well, so do I." I said, "Well, I smoke pot." And he said, "Well, so do I." And then he said, "Well, do you have any?"
I proposed to Darian Hartman and asked her to marry me, and she said, "Well, I won't marry you in free fall, but I will take the plunge with you." Thank you very much, and blue skies.
If you can talk me down slowly, don't run.